Welcome to the Exact Match Wood Floor Repair series of videos. There's two videos we'd like to show you today. The first one is the beginning stage of the scratch repair, and the second one's the exciting one where you get to make the scratch disappear. Anybody can do this repair. It takes about 11 minutes, 12 minutes maybe, and homeowners and professionals get the same results. There's no sanding, no refinishing, no board replacement. It's so easy, anybody can do it. Thanks for watching. First thing you need to do is determine how deep this scratch is, and if you're going to use epoxy, or you're going to just top coat it with the color cards. So the way you do that is take your thumbnail and run it across like so. If it catches, that's a deep enough scratch, you're going to want to use the epoxy. If they get too thin, the epoxy won't really have much to grab onto. So that's your test. Next thing you want to do is you want to clear out any loose wood fibers that might be in that scratch. And so what we do is we use the scraping card. This one's been used quite a bit, but it still works just fine. So I'm going like so, taking the edge, the rounded edge, and just making sure it's good and cleaned out. And that way, because the epoxy's got to have something pretty solid to grab onto. If you've got a bunch of loose fibers in there, it's not going to grab onto it. So the next move that you want to make is you want to smooth out these edges. There's a lot of weight that's put on this thing when you've got, let's say a foot of a couch and the nylon glide falls off but the nail's still there. There's a lot of weight there, so it will raise the edges a little bit. You want to make sure you flatten those edges down. And the way I like to do it, there's a couple different ways you can do it, but I like to use the end of my brush. You simply take your brush and you run it like so. And that, a little bit of pressure on there. That will take those lifted edges and just push them down like that. Now it's going to be able to accept the epoxy without having any big lip. If you get a stubborn one, you got a real hard floor, or you've got a big deep scratch, you can use the edge of the bottle that we include, the urethane bottle, and just put it in there like that and smooth it out. Now I don't have any ridge there. You still feel, of course, the scratch, but you don't have a ridge. So next thing you want to do is you cut off a little piece of epoxy. We include the epoxy. It's a special kind of epoxy that holds really well to wood. It's a wood epoxy, but this is specifically formulated for us so that it remains somewhat flexible. It's hard, but yet flexible. And the reason why we wanted a little bit of flexible in it is so that as you walk on the floor, your floors move a little bit. This stuff will stay in there, it won't fall, it won't come out. And that's the reason why we allow it to be somewhat flexible. So what you would do is you cut off a little piece like this off the end of the tube, and you knead that in your fingers for about a minute. In order to save time, I've already done that with this one here. And you put that little ball there, the front of the scratch. You want to take your thumb, make sure my thumb's clean. You take your thumb and you push it, and you push that epoxy right into the scratch, just like that. Okay? Now, this is the neat part here, because what we're going to do is take the epoxy off the surrounding wood, but leave the epoxy in the scratch where we want it. And there's a very specific way you must do this. We include this type of card here. What you do is you hold the card about at a 45-degree angle and you pull it back. Okay? And you wipe it clean on your wiping cloth. And do the same thing here. And so what you're doing is taking the surrounding epoxy off, and at the same time pushing that epoxy into the scratch. And the cool thing about this, by doing it this way, you don't need to sand these floors. You can do this. It takes a minute to get this stuff off, but you've effectively filled this without having to sand the floors. And that's a hard thing to come by. So I'm going to talking for a second and hurry it up. Alright, here we go. Now, what we have is our scratch revealed, and it's full of epoxy. So all we have to do now, we let it cure. But before we let it cure, and this is the real magic here, you wet your finger. I like to use spit, but people use water, whatever you need. Wet your finger a little bit, and you smooth it out, or thumb in this case. And you just want to smooth that out. The coolest thing is what I just did eliminates you from having to sand. Okay, so what we're going to do is let that cure for 1 hour, and when I come back, we're going to show you how to finish the rest of the repair. Okay, welcome back. We're now going to color in the epoxy that's now filled. Okay, first what we want to do though is you want to clean off some of this residue that's left over. Now this epoxy's hardened, and what you do is you take the magic pad, it's a special type of very fine steel wool, and you just go over it like so. This will not scratch your floors at all, and what that's going to do is clean up the little bit of residue that's left over from when you used your scraping card. Okay, now the next step would be to take and fan out your color cards. These are a special type of card that on these cards the finish actually breaks down off of the card. Okay, so you don't have to go to the store for 15 different trips. And so I know that these two color cards are probably going to do the trick for us. Okay, and if you make a mistake and you pick the wrong color card, it's really no big deal because it happens all the time. Wood's got thousands of different shades to it. And if you pick the wrong color card, you just top coat it again with the right one. So you're going to, you might pick the wrong one the first try. If you do, don't worry about it. Just put another coat on with the right color. Okay, so here we go. We're going to take and activate the card with the activator solution. A couple of drops on there. I like to use about 5 drops. Take my brush, swirl it around, and the trick that I do to get a nice fine tip on my brush, because on a scratch that's thin like this, you really want to do that. It was a deep scratch, but nonetheless it's not that wide. So I take my brush and I twirl it and I pull it back so that I get a nice fine tip. Now I'm going to color it in, and this is just simply using a little dabbing technique. I'm going to try to get the color just in the scratch itself where the epoxy has filled it. And that way I'm not getting it all over the floor, and it makes this repair even that much less noticeable. And if you do get a little on the floor, it's not a big deal. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just if you're looking for perfection, which we of course always strive to find, we will do this. Okay, here we go. Almost done with that. Now sometimes you'll find you need to add a little bit more to it because it doesn't cover in one full coat, which is fine. This stuff dries in about, I don't know, 15 seconds. So I can top coat it no problem. Okay, here we go. Now that really is very, very close, just with this color card right here. But I can see, because we have all this different flecking in here in the wood, that what I'd like to do is I'm going to top coat that, and I'm going to fake and replicate in the flecking in there with what's called the graining card. And the graining card is the last card on the deck, as you'll see. And what we do with the graining card, it's actually a translucent stain. And what that does is it replicates the flecking and what have you. So here we go. I'm going to break down the activator card, or I'm sorry, the graining card with the activator. Now on the graining card, I'm doing flecking like this particularly, I like to use a little less material, because if you go too heavy, it will be obvious. The other technique I like to do to break up this sometimes is to do a dabbing technique with the wiping cloth. And what I'll do here is just add a couple of flecks in there, just a little here and there, to break up the visual appearance of that solid color I just put down. And then I dab it a little bit. Sometimes you need to do that just to soften up the edge just a little bit. And there we go. I'm going to soften that up a little bit more. And that is a very hard to see scratch. That was a pretty deep scratch, and now you can't hardly see it. When you're standing up, you'll never see it. I'm going to zoom in here. And now if this is in a real high traffic area, what you want to do is use the polyurethane that we include. And the same technique holds true. You just take a little bit of poly and you dab it right along where the scratch was. And that's it, you're done. We use a special type of epoxy that remains flexible so it won't pop out. And that's it. You're a pro at fixing floors. The whole entire repair took about 10 minutes. Thank you for watching the Exact Match video. I'm going to zoom in on it for you now. Look at that. That's the scratch. You will not find anything better than that.